Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to Indie Side episode 2, where we take the side of indie games and we review them and we help you decide which ones to play. Again, super lame catchline, fully aware. If you think of something better, please comment it. I would really like to find something better. If you guys did comment a better one on the last video, I'm recording this before that came out, therefore I don't have it yet. And if I do have a better one, it will be on the third episode. Anyways, today we're going to be reviewing Blossom Tales 2, The Minotaur Prince. And in this one, we're going to be able to do it a little bit quicker than the last one, because when we reviewed the last one, we got most of what we needed out of what the game is, and we're mostly just going to be doing comparisons on what the game did better, what I think they unfortunately did worse, and like I said, it's a great game, and there's no such thing as a perfect game. So let's just dive into it and let's look into how it's not perfect. And then right here, looking at the title screen, you can already see it's pretty much the same as the last one. It says press spacebar to continue. Again, same issue. This spacebar is never used again in the game. If you're going to be using a button, okay, if anyone here is a game developer, if you're going to be using a button to interact with your main menu, please have that be one of the buttons that you actually use in the game. It is very confusing from the player perspective to be introducing controls that are never actually used. And then you can take this opportunity as well to initiate telling the player what their main action button is going to be, which is something that they didn't do. And then on top of that, when you do get into the game, my issue with lack of tutorialization and then the control scheme was even worse. So like on the first game, I did not like the control scheme. I did not like the lack of tutorialization regarding the control scheme, but I did make it work, and like it ended up being totally worth it because it was a great game. With this one, the control scheme, in my opinion, was so poor, I actually did remap it. So they still used Z or Z. I'm Canadian, so I say Z. Um, for your action and your sword button. And however, they did introduce a new mechanic where you would use, I think it defaults to V, and it's for rolling. It's dashing. You also use it to swim faster, which is another new mechanic that they added with swimming, and I think that was another great addition. It made the world much more traversable. But anyways, when they did this, they made it so that with their default control scheme, you are automatically using your pinky for your main button, and that's backwards. Your main button should always either be your index or your thumb. It should always be a finger that is prominent and easy to use because you use it the most. If you're going to be using less used fingers on your control scheme, make it for less used controls. The player finds it way more comfortable using a thumb or an index finger versus a ring finger or a pinky. In fact, a lot of gamers, especially computer gamers, so you look at like, the WASD setup for movement controls in a lot of games. We don't use our pinky for anything unless we have to like open up a menu or hit shift or something, right? Like the fact that they assigned the main button of the game to the pinky was just a poor choice. The artwork, again, I love it. I love this just simple pixelated look of a game. They did upgrade it a bit. I'm not sure if the actual Lily sprite was better. I think they might have kept that, but they did just increase details and give more variety to the world with this title, and it did look much better. My issue with the clouds was still there, but it got on my nerves less. So I don't know if they saw that issue and then decided to dial it back a bit, or if I got used to it playing the first one, it didn't get on my nerves as much. I still think that the cloud should not be a thing. The camera perspective is not far enough off the ground to justify having clouds floating in the foreground, and they're just an encumbrance on the viewpoint of the game. Um, the one thing I did really like about this game versus the last game is that the last game was way more combat focused. You would enter areas with large amounts of enemies. In fact, here I'll pull up a clip from my previous video if I have one. But This game was much more focused on the adventure. It's an action adventure game, and these top-down Zelda-like games, in my opinion, it is much more about the adventure, interacting with the world, solving puzzles, and feeling like you're going out on an adventure. It's not a roguelike. With roguelite, it's all about killing enemies, and then it's usually about hectic battles and lots of enemies and killing waves of them. This is an adventure game, and this game much did a much better job of embracing the adventure aspect of it. And in doing so, they included a lot more puzzles and different varieties of puzzles, and I really appreciated that. And but the combat was definitely still a prominent part. It just wasn't nearly as over the top. Like when they were trying to make an area challenging, instead of making it challenging by loading up a ton of enemies, they made it challenging by creating harder puzzles or making it so that we had to figure out, well, how I had to figure out how to traverse from this area to that area. And then speaking of traversal, their equipment was much better. They still had a lot of the equipment from the first one. You still had the shovel, which was a great moneymaker. They still had the boomerang, but then they included the yo-yo, which operates a lot like a hook shot. And then they included I forget what they call it, but it's a little teleporter maker machine thing. And you would set a point, and then you'd be able to walk away, and when you used it again, you would be teleported back to that point, and you could use it to get around unavoidable obstacles and things like that. And in my opinion, it was really cool. I actually found myself using it quite a bit in combat. When you have enemies that are throwing stuff, you can just set a point, run over here, they throw, you just teleport back, gets you out of the way. It's great for dodging. They do have the dash mechanic and the roll mechanic, which also makes it a lot easier to dodge. And then in doing so, they've also included a lot more enemies that have projectiles, which isn't a bad thing. Like if you're going to be introducing a new mechanic, you should be putting that mechanic to good use, and they did do a good job of that. The world itself is filled with much more life. I didn't take any time to go ahead and go through the random speech rotation of the different types of NPCs. I know I did that in the first video when I found that contradiction with the villager who loves and hates mushroom soup. I didn't really go through that much trouble with this game. I just the world itself had a lot more to do though. The stores were a lot more plentiful. There were more towns. There were a lot more side quests. I didn't even bother trying to count the side quests, but there was a ton of them. Right, and like everywhere you went, there was a little bit of lore to that area, and there was activities to do in it. And that's something that a lot of video games falter on, having large open worlds, but they're not filling them with anything. A great example of that is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I don't know if you guys have ever played that, but at the time when it came out, it was like the largest open world ever made, but it was empty. There was nothing in it. Like you stray too far away from where the main storyline's taking place, and it's just nothingness. Like there's stuff, but there's nothing to do in it. But this game doesn't have that issue. There's always something to do everywhere you go. Lots of side quests, lots of alternate content. They even included a fishing mini game, and then there's a store that is looking to buy fish, so you can go ahead and you can fish and you can buy fish, and the fish also get used in potion making. That's another thing they did differently. Instead of making it so that you could just stack up potions endlessly, because like at one point I had a stack of like 15 health potions in the last game. In this one, you craft potions. You can also buy them, but they're not as easy to find. But you mostly craft them. You go into these witches' hut and you throw ingredients into the pot and you create the potions. And the ingredients are found throughout the world. You'll find like herbs and mushrooms and flowers and fish and stuff, and you would throw it into the cooking pot and you would create the potions, which did subtract a little bit away from like having things to purchase, which was an issue that I had in the first game. But one thing I liked about it is that it didn't give you just like endless health potions like you had in the first game, because like, you would have to have empty bottles on hand. And the first bottle is pretty much just given to you right at the beginning of the game. After that, I think I found one through a side quest. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, I can definitely find empty bottles in stores. And then I think at the end of the game, I had like 5, maybe 6 empty bottles. I know for sure I didn't have them all. If I had to just ballpark a guess for a number, I would say there's probably 10 of them. And okay, another thing that they did the same but better was the currency system. I had a big issue with the currency system in the first game. I felt like they offered a lot of money, And then the things that you had to buy were expensive, so they would chew through your wallet pretty quickly. And for the first like half of the game, the currency system was well balanced. But by the end of the game, I thought the currency system was actually kind of useless, because at the end of it, you just had way too much money and you had nothing to spend it on. And in my opinion, if you're going to be doing a currency system, there should always be something to buy, something to replenish. Otherwise, like if you're just going to have like one-time purchasables but have quite a few of them, I find as a game developer you would be better off to have alternative methods to get those things. But in this game, um, I think it was just from like the sheer quantity of purchasables, mostly in the form of empty bottles and heart pieces and those little green things you use to upgrade your energy meter. By the end of the game, like when I finished the game, I still had things to buy. And that's the important part of the currency system is you don't want your players to feel like they have all this money and nothing to buy. And as much as they didn't really change a whole lot on the currency system, they did change that, and that was the my biggest issue with the currency system. So I think the economy in this game was much more justified. They also made it so that the bombs weren't as overpowered as in the first one. In the first one, eventually I would just like almost never use my sword, and I would just throw bombs everywhere, and they were actually like kind of like overpowered, and then you could just throw them from a distance, and you could just mess up multiple enemies at once. In the second one, like in this one, they still had the bombs, obviously, but they didn't kill enemies nearly as quickly. I personally didn't find a bomb upgrade in this game, but the fact that it exists in the first game makes me think that it probably does exist in this one. But the fact that they weren't quite so overpowered against enemies actually had me using my sword more, which is good. Right? It was much more engaging in the combat because I didn't feel that I had a quick, easy way to dispose of enemies. I actually had to get in there and actually kill them, right? And then also, like, speaking of enemies, not only do they have a much wider variety of enemies, but the boss battles were a huge improvement. When it comes to the last boss, I still found it personally to be a little bit easy. It does have multiple stages, which is nice, but I did find that I was able to defeat the boss with minimal healing and minimal effort on my first try. But given that this game kind of seems like it's geared towards more towards kids, right? Anybody above the age of 6 could play this game. Like they would have a challenge near the end, but like I did still enjoy it even though I'm like 30. But yeah, the bosses were much more engaging. They were much better done. They're much more imaginative. The dungeon layouts were a lot better. I found that the dungeons actually posed like a puzzle to them, like an overall puzzle to the dungeon, rather than just being rooms you traverse to kill enemies inside of, which was the kind of like the core of what the dungeons were in the first one. I do wish there were more dungeons, but they set the game to be a certain size, and that's the size that it is, and that's absolutely fine. I just kind of at the end of the game, I was left wishing there was more game, which is not a bad thing to have happen. You should want your players to want more games. So that way, when you make in this case, a sequel, or hopefully eventually a third installment in the franchise, they actually go and buy them. And if there is a third one that comes out of this game, I am absolutely going to buy it and review it because these were great games. The soundtrack was a big improvement. Not only were the songs better produced, but they were used more appropriately. There was nowhere where I thought that the atmosphere of the location didn't suit the song that they chose to play for that location. A lot of the world animations were also a lot better. There were some really good ones in the first one. I don't think I really showed them off in the video because I consider them to kind of be spoilers, but the world has much more grander and epic reactions to, like, say, unlocking a dungeon or doing something that affects the world as a whole. The way that the world reacts is much more responsive, and just it seems like to be on like a grander scale. Going back to talking about the art form, there was one location, this one, where they forgot to put in the edge tiles. I thought that was just kind of funny. I looking at it, looking at the tiles, it looks like there's actually like a corner there. So I think what happened was that they built two platforms and decided to connect it into one, but then didn't actually connect the edge tiles to wrap it all up. They also introduced an instrument, which is nice. It's also a staple of that type of game. And I've personally only found a few songs, and one of them was to summon a mount, which was another thing they introduced for this one. And the mount was actually a lot of fun. When you unlock the mount, you actually get to choose between a horse and a pig. And you choose between the horse and the pig because, the grandpa telling their kids the story, they're arguing over which one that it is, and then you as a player get to make the final call. I personally chose pig. Pigs are my favorite animals, so of course I'm going to choose them. And and then instead of just having the one ability that you can do with your sword, is in the first one you had this ability where you would do what they call a roundhouse, where you would hold down the button and then you would do a spin. Another very common thing of these types of games. But then they added that if you were mid spin and you hit the attack button, you would jump up and you would do a ground slam, right? In this one, instead of just introducing a single combat mechanic right at the beginning, they made it so throughout the world you find these things called combat scrolls, and you would take them to the dojo, and you would use those to learn one or two abilities of your choice. Again, because they use the grandpa telling his kids the story, and then the kids are arguing over which the ability it is, and you get to make the final call. Which is, I really do enjoy that side of the story mechanic, the fact that they allow the narrative to fluctuate based on your input. Um, when it comes to narrative, the game is a sequel to the first one. It is not a direct sequel. It takes place generations after the first one, and the world has been completely reshaped. Besides the fact that there's just kind of a couple nods towards the first game, when it comes to the narrative, it is almost completely standalone. So you do not need to play the first one to understand the story of this one, because it is legitimately just a couple nods to the original storyline. So that being said, it is a great game. You don't need to play the first one to be able to understand or enjoy the second one. The second one is a much stronger game. I think the team was about the same size by the looks of the credits. I think they had a couple more people helping out with animations and artwork. Other than that, it was still like the same core team. I'm going to give this game a 7.5 out of 10. And it would have gone 8 out of 10 if it wasn't for the fact that the button control thing just really gets to me. They did a lot of things better. They made a lot of pretty major improvements. But my biggest issue with the first one was an even bigger issue with this one. And like if you can remap the controls, and I ended up doing that for this game. I felt that the controls were so poor, they needed to be remapped. Like I said, I play on computer, so I would think that um, because I know it's available on the Nintendo Switch. I will look up to see what else it's available on. But I do know that, like, gaming consoles, their controllers are built for ergonomic comfort, whereas with computer games, the game developer needs to think about ergonomics while they're building it, and they didn't do that. To me, it seems like they were building a game for console, and they've just built it on the computer. And what they should have been doing was building a computer game and then porting it to console. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Amazing game. I highly recommend it. It was on sale on Steam when I bought it. I'll post the price in the video here. I can't remember off the top of my head how much it costs. I believe it's also available on Nintendo Switch. Like I said, I will look into that and I will let you know exactly what it's available on. And for that, that's going to be it for this video. As for the next video, I do not know what game I'm going to be covering. If there is an indie game that you guys would like to see covered on the indie side, please let me know. Because, like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. The next couple of videos I'm going to be doing aren't going to be of the indie side, so you're probably looking at 3 weeks or a month before I release another indie game review. But like I said, if you have any games you would like to see on this show, please comment below. Let me know directly, whatever. And also, please help me think of a better catch line to open these things with, because that catch line sucks. It's the best I could come up with at the time, and I'm just sticking with it for now. And I figured I'd get the community involved and help me think of something better. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up, say thank you for watching the second episode of the Indie Side, and I hope to see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I like to see you guys tuning into more videos, and also contribute in the comments. I like to see you guys become part of the community a little bit. So with that, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to wish you all a good one, and peace out.